Basically, my presentation is I'm going to discuss the LGFA trans policy from my side, from my perspective as a mother, as a woman, as a player, a coach, a volunteer. I've been involved in sport for a very long time. So this is just how I see this policy affecting myself and fellow women of Ireland and further afield. I'll give you a small little bit of background about the LGFA and the GAA. The GAA is the national governing body over the men's game in Ireland, and the LGFA is the national body over the female game in Ireland. Now, the GAA was founded back in 1888. It took over 90 years after that in 1974 before the ladies game came into being. It started with humble beginnings back in the 1960s, where it was really actually a gimmick. It was a novel attraction. It was a way to pull in a crowd into your local club to raise money for local charities. And at this point as well, the GAA was already so well established that they weren't very welcoming of letting any woman into playing their national sport. So, but the LGFA, the women that were playing the game, decided that they were not going to be undeterred by this. So them and their allies pushed forward, and they did form the LGFA. And since its formation, like, the LGFA is basically almost a worldwide organization now. It has ladies teams and clubs in nearly every country around the globe. And people need to understand that GAA clubs they're steeped in history and culture. They're a massive thing in nearly every city and town and village around Ireland and beyond. It is more than just a sports club. GAA clubs are social gatherings, and they're a fantastic aspect to everyone's life. So that's just a quick wee background for people who aren't sure what the LGFA is. So it's a national governing body for Ladies Gaelic football in Ireland and across the world. We'll move on then to how sort of the LGFA perceived the notion that this policy needed to come about. So in August 2022, in a Dublin Championship final, there was an incident where a referee stopped the game due to the presence of a trans-identifying male in one of the teams. Now, the ref didn't know what to do, so after a bit of chit-chat, the game did continue on. But the incident drew a lot of attention online, and it sparked from that then that the LGFA in September 2022 published a statement, which it can be seen in many papers and online, where it states the LGFA is currently working in consultation with their counterparts in the GAA and other sporting organisations in relation to developing policy in this area. So that was September 2022. Then if we move on to the actual introduction of the policy, in February 2023, county boards were sent an email by the LGFA administration, which stated now that they had this LGFA policy. But for a lot of people, they assumed that this was going to be the start of the consultation, because at this point, nobody at grassroots level, county level, or provincial levels, as far as I have been made aware of, were contacted by the LGFA to be part of the consultation. So everybody thought, okay, it's going to start coming from here. But no, lo and behold, the LGFA had the policy already written and was ready to have it adopted. So after a brief discussion at a Central Council meeting on the 15th of February this year, the policy was voted on and adopted. And now the people at this meeting are delegates from counties all around Ireland. They didn't get a chance to talk to any of their members about how they viewed this policy. So they were basically voting blindly. So the policy was immediately adopted and put on the website for applications to come in. And lo and behold, again, not more than about 6 weeks later, the first trans-identifying male was given approval by the LGFA Transgender Application Committee to play Ladies Gaelic football. And still to this day, though, we have no idea who is on that committee or what their expertise are. So it was all a very rushed process that no players had any real say in any of it. So if we move on then, we'll talk about how there was a lot of uproar and public outcry at about the speed and the nature at which the policy was formed and approved, as well as its contents. The LGFA did say that they undertook a comprehensive consultation process, but we've no idea who they consulted with. We've no idea what legislation they looked at. they did say they looked at international best practices, but for me, international best practices as well would be like World Rugby, World Aquatics, World Athletics. They've changed their policies now. So I don't know. Nobody knows what the LGFA looked at, and they, like the LGFA say, they looked at the Equal Status Act and the Gender Recognition Act. Now, the Equal Status Act, up to a point, it's not discrimination for a club to be for a particular type of people. So having a team for women is not discrimination. But the issue, I think, comes from this, is that the GRA in Ireland, once somebody is given a gender recognition cert, that it almost gives them access to female sports and changing areas. So it's really, I'm going to push that the GRA as well be looked at and amended by the government. We'll move on then. Like you says, what policy is there now and it's in place. The LGFA now has 3 application forms. One is for somebody over 18 years old. There's an application for somebody between 12 and 15 years old. And there's an application form for people aged 16 and 17 years old. Now, the only requirements are that they have a letter from their doctor stating that, number one, the applicant is transitioning or transitioned. And number 2, that the applicant's testosterone levels are equal to or less than 10 nanomoles per litre for the previous 12 months. Now, at this stage in these proceedings, I'm sure everybody here all knows that an average female testosterone levels don't go nearly above 2.4, 2.5 nanomoles per litre at the most. So what this policy has done, it has broken the human body down into a testosterone level. And to me, the human body is far too complicated to be able to be boiled down to that. I mean, you only need to use your eyes every day to see male advantage over female advantage when it comes to sports, with their, they're taller, higher muscle mass, less body fat, stronger bones, larger hearts. I mean, that all translates onto a Gaelic pitch as a male who can run faster, jump higher, jump further, be physically stronger. So we all know, hands down, that male advantage is something that it's there and it cannot be taken away. We'll move on then to the risk of injury, which is going to be a huge thing with this. If we, some people will say that ladies Gaelic football is a non-contact sport. Now, ladies Gaelic football may not be as physical as the men's game, but in my experience of 3 decades of playing the game and coaching the game, it is anything but non-contact. It is a physical sport, and women who love the game get stuck in. It's as simple as that. And the risk of injury is going to become far more apparent if more and more applicants are given the go-ahead to play. Only recently, in women's field hockey, which is another non-contact sport in Scotland, a trans-identified male injured a young female opposition player. According to eyewitness, she was flattened, is the word that they use. The game had to be halted for several minutes. She was taken out of the game then with head, neck, hip injuries. Also, again, we have a trans-identified male in Australia who is playing soccer there, who has been noted to have injured a number of female opposition players, one of whom I believe had to undergo hospital treatment. There's also the young American girl in America who was injured severely in a volleyball game, where a transgender or a trans-identified male spiked the ball so hard at her that she was concussed. And that happened in September 22, and she is still suffering the effects of that injury today. And as far as I can see it, one female injured by a trans-identified male is too many. We play sports with our bodies, not with our feelings. It's too big a risk. And then following on from that risk, we come next, the next slide is about insurance. I just give you a few examples there of the injuries that can happen with a trans-identified male allowed to play women's sports. So a logical follow-on to them, to me, is an insurance worry. We have no idea if the LGFA have spoken to the underwriters at Allianz Insurance about this policy. I have no idea if Allianz are aware that the LGFA have already approved a trans-identified male to play or female sport. I would like to know, have the premiums been raised? And if they have been raised, well, how are the LGFA planning on offsetting these extra charges? Are they going to start charging LGFA members more for membership? Are we going to see fees at gates going up to cover the costs of this? Are we as females going to have to end up paying for a policy that we don't want? It's safe to say we know that a trans-identified male on a pitch is going to cause a higher increase on risk to female players. Therefore, there's going to be more claims and higher premiums. Now, the LGFA already encourages its members to have private health insurance to cover some medical costs, as its injury fund is not an insurance policy. So now every member who plays, or any parent who has an underage player who plays this sport, is going to have to check with their own private insurance as well if their child or they themselves are going to be covered if they're injured while playing against a trans-identified male on an LGFA pitch. So it throws up a lot of issues that way for people also. We'll move on to the next slide then, where I am going to speak quickly about safeguarding privacy and dignity. Like the LGFA have made this policy, but they haven't provided any guidelines to clubs on how the use of changing rooms, shower and toilet facilities are to be used. If there is an applicant who has given approval onto a team and you have to host that team, what facilities do you need to provide, or are they going to be in with, the female players? The policy does nothing in relation to safeguarding, especially of underage players. You could now have a 15-year-old girl in a changing room with a fully intact trans-identifying male. So safeguarding for all intended purposes has been fully abandoned. And it definitely takes away the privacy and the dignity of its female players. Someone said to me recently, actually, do you know why they scan every single suitcase at an airport? It's because they've no idea which one has the bomb in it. And what we're doing now is good men know not to enter female-only spaces so that the more undesirable men who do will stand out. Like sports categories were developed to protect women's safety. So the good men know to stay out, and the more undesirable ones are being let in. It feels to me like we are in a situation now where why should we bother locking the doors when our sporting bodies are giving the men the key to enter? So it's definitely, they've done nothing in regards to safeguarding or privacy or dignity of its players. I'll move on now and I'll speak briefly about fairness and safety. Women require female-only categories to play sports fairly and safely. It's what they were created for. I mean, you look at the moment at the world of cycling, it's also a non-contact sport. And recently there's been a 24-year-old girl who has given up cycling, 24 years old, saying, I've left cycling. Losing to a trans rider hurts on a million different levels. That's just shocking. This girl has worked all her life. She's only 24 and she's already decided to give up. A recent article as well by Mariah Burton Nelson. At the moment I read it anyway, it listed 58 trans-identifying males as winners in women's sports. Now that is just the tip of the iceberg. And I believe if more sporting bodies fall foul of prioritizing inclusion over safety and fairness, then this is going to become more and more important. It's going to happen more and more here in Ireland. Women are going to lose out in positions on teams. They're going to lose out on accolades, awards, scholarships, prize monies. They're going to lose out on so many opportunities. And I know now some sporting organisations have begun to change their policies, but a lot of them still only change them at the elite level. Now, your future elite levels come from your grassroots player pathways from their local clubs. And if we aren't able to provide the local club with safety and fairness to them, then our elite athletes are not going to be there because they're not coming through those grassroots programs that we have in place for them. We have to provide safety and fairness to all women, no matter what level they compete at. So now I'm going to move on to what I call my call to action. This is the people that I would like to call on to actually stand up now and do something for the women of Ireland. I'm going to call on the LGFA, Michael Naughton and Helen O'Rourke to please listen to your members, your players, your coaches, review the policy immediately. We need an association that protects its female players, one that does not disregard our rights to safeguarding privacy, dignity, fairness and safety. I'm also going to call on the GAA, Liam McCarthy and Jarlath Burns, to ask them, can they shed light on the policy? Did they consult on the policy, as the LGFA claimed back in September 22? In light of the fact now that we're talking about integration of all the associations, are they going to stand over this policy? I believe the GAA should be stepping up to find a way to encourage norm-conforming males to feel more comfortable in the men's game, rather than threatening the safety and fairness of the ladies' game. I'm going to ask the Camogie Association also, Hilda Breslin and Sinead McNulty, are they going to stand over this policy also? Have they consulted with their players regarding this transgender policy? Are their players happy with the possibility of this policy now becoming theirs? I'm going to call on the President of Ireland, the Oireachtas, the Dáil, the Seanad, senators and TDs. You have the power now to protect the women of Ireland. Amend the GRA. Self-ID can lead and has led to undesirable men flaunting the law to get away with things that they wouldn't normally get away with. Sex must be a protected characteristic, not gender. Sex is a biological attribute. Gender is a social construct. You know, sex determines your health issues, your treatment plans, not your gender. We have to recognize these facts and protect biological sex. I'm also going to call on the Ministers for Sport, Catherine Martin and Thomas Byrne. Have you held talks with Sport in Ireland, the national governing bodies of sport and the local partnerships, you know, in relation to these transgender policies? What are you doing to protect, you know, the women's categories in sports? Public money is used to help fund the LGFA. So me as a member of your public, I would like to know what you are doing to get to the bottom of this, to aid and protect women's sports. On the next page then as well, I'm also going to call on the Integration Steering Committee, Mary McAleese. They recently published a brief on integration. It mentions gender a lot in this brief, and I would like them to look at that, and it really should, to me, specify sex, not gender. They use the integration of Gulf Ireland as an example in this brief. Now, Gulf Ireland's gender policy is one of the biggest policies out there. It almost unconditionally allows trans-identifying males to play the ladies' game. Now, we cannot let ladies Gaelic football end up like that. The brief also states that integration is underpinned by equality. Then we have to help the associations address the unfair advantage of males over females in our sport, on the pitch as well as off the pitch. I'm going to call on Sport Ireland, UNMA. They are the statutory authority that oversees the development of sport in Ireland. Do they see this policy as developing sport for females in Ireland? Like at the moment, Sport Ireland say they are undertaking a gender inclusion consultation process. Well, I hope that they learn from other people's mistakes around the world and they step up and protect the women's categories. I'm going to call on the Federation of Irish Sports, Claire McGrath. The Federation of Irish Sports is the independent and authoritative voice of Irish sports national governing bodies. The Federation states that it is committed to influencing the development of effective sports policies. Now, how independent is the Federation? Did they have any influence over the LGFA on the policy? Did they believe that the LGFA policy to be effective? You know, perhaps now at this point, they can step in and aid the LGFA in reviewing the policy. I'm also going to call on the Gaelic Players Association, Brian McCreath and Tom Parsons. Now, the GPA wants to uphold the brilliance of our inter-county players. Female players still have a long battle ahead of them whenever it comes to the equality of the sexes. And the introduction of this policy is going to make it harder for the female players to uphold this brilliance if they are not going to be initially even joining their sports due to the presence of trans-identifying males either on their teams or on opposition teams. They're not even going to join their local clubs due to the fact that our governing sporting body has shown no respect for their safeguarding, their safety or their fairness in sport. You know, trans-identifying male inclusion means female exclusion. And finally, I'm going to call on everyone, players, parents, coaches, representatives, the media, everybody in Ireland further afield, speak to your local clubs, your county boards, your councillors, your politician. Speak up for the right to safety, privacy, dignity, and fairness of your wives, your partners, your daughters, your nieces, your friends. Speaking up is not bigotry or transphobia or discrimination. We must get behind this. We cannot allow sex to be replaced by gender identity in our laws and our policies. So yeah, I just call on everybody to get behind it, and hopefully over the next while I will get some more answers. But for now, let's save women's sports and hope that something can be done. Thank you.